This is the Yard Content Studios podcast, the Yard podcast at theyardcreates.org. And my very first guest is not just a guest because she practically lives here at Federal Prison Tips and at the Yard. And she's been working in the background probably for like the last 6 weeks or so. We have a long story. We'll tell you all about it. But she's my sister from another mister, Kirstyn Niemela, J6er. My beard, for those of you that understand what that means, and so much more. She's also the advocacy director and the assistant manager here at federalprisontips.com. But thank you for joining us for the very first episode of the Yard podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, you've done some podcasts already. You've already been with my good friend Jason on my previous podcast, 10 Toes. I saw that show. It was particularly good. But there's some things that we've talked about behind the scenes that I want to bring to the light because, you went to prison. What did you go to prison for?
Misdemeanors.
Wait a minute. You went to federal prison for a misdemeanor.
Yes.
For how long?
My sentence was 11 months.
And so misdemeanor, you're thinking like jaywalking, trespassing, something like that, right?
Yeah, so I got trespassing, demonstrating, parading, and picketing, and 2 counts of disorderly conduct.
Because you were involved in the J6 insurrection, as they call it.
That's what they claim.
So let's get into that real quick. Take me back to your politically, obviously, you're MAGA, but you're not one of those people that likes to be put into like a hole. You have your own beliefs. Conservative beliefs, but you're a lesbian, and we were just talking the other day because you went to a No Kings rally out in West Palm, and people are talking to you about like, why are you turning on your people? And I'm openly gay, and my partner's openly gay, and we're like a threesome now that hangs out all the time. We're good friends, but me and you are very well politically aligned, but we're often outcast from the others because it's believed that if you're LGBTQIA plus or the alphabet mafia, you can't possibly be MAGA or a J6er. So tell me, like, who is Kirstyn Niemela, and what are your political beliefs, and how did you end up at the Capitol on January 6th?
Well, believe it or not, before Trump ran the first time, I was never into politics.
Did you ever vote?
I never voted.
You never voted. And how old are you?
38.
So you probably, you've, what, 20 or so? No, not 20. 4 presidential elections that you didn't vote in.
Yeah. What started was the child care family court is the issue. DCYF. I was fighting for 2 young boys, and I got discriminated against for being gay and not being legally married as their reason, even though I pulled up the laws and that was not their reason. They just particularly didn't like the fact that I was gay, I guess. And that kind of got me exposed to the corruption within the family court. And then it made me start standing up for all of the insanity that the gay community was doing, like drag queen story time and twerking for little kids. And
let's go back to that family issue though, because that comes in a lot with gay people. They think that they're not fit to be parents. Did you have straight parents?
Yes.
Me too. And I turned out gay, and so did you. So I mean, I have a daughter who is straight, and she knew that I was with boys at that time, and that I'm with a man now, and it seems to make no difference. But that's one of the discriminations that gay people go through all the time. How could you possibly, if you're gay, you're going to raise a gay kid? I mean, that's complete bullshit because we both had straight parents.
Yeah, no, that is definitely not true at all.
And so, was that the discrimination you were getting as you were fighting for these boys?
It was. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, I didn't have an easy upbringing. Back in the day, it was not as accepted as it is now. Now it's like everywhere you go is rainbow this, transgender this. And so it was a lot different for me growing up than someone coming out gay now. But it just made me...
yeah, I'm 12 years older than you. So, I mean, I went through that too. All the little rumors going around school, and I was the boy you didn't want to hang out with and all this kind of stuff. And my partner's substantially younger than me, and he grew up in that time where it was a little bit more acceptable. But even you know, as a late 90s baby, had that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty rough growing up. And I grew up, I was in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I was the only white kid in my class.
Vietnam.
I was in ROTC. I was showing Nico the other day, like my childhood photos, and I was the Ninja Turtles. Everybody knew from a very young age that I was going to be gay, and it's not something that's taught to you. But it was also rough growing up because, the Bible thumpers would say that I'm a sin and that you can't believe in God and God doesn't love you if you're gay, which is completely wrong.
They want you to to discriminate against the gay people, but forgive the preachers that rape little boys.
Right.
That's the way that it is. So, what got you into politics?
Well, Trump is really what got me into politics. Just seeing the corruption with Obama, and I knew that something needed to change. And, people in this country have never seen people rally for a president like Trump ever in U.S. history.
And so take me back to January 6th. Like, what made you make the decision to go to the Capitol? Did you know that this was going to happen? Like, yeah, I saw it on TV, probably from prison, if I'm not mistaken. And, I probably didn't understand it as clearly as I do now, knowing that, Jay Sixer's in our camp and a good friend of ours. But, you get to the Capitol, is the plan to storm the Capitol and to uproot Joe Biden and have a coup and all this shit like they say, or what was the plan?
No. So before January 6th, we were having car parades, rallies. So I went to D.C. for the Stop the Steal rally 3 weeks before January 6th. And it, again, was another patriotic, peaceful event until it got dark out and Antifa was coming out and people were coming out of alleyways with blood all over their faces. They were being jumped by Antifa. And, the Proud Boys, I didn't know any Proud Boys at the time, escorted me and my friends back to safety to the hotel because Antifa was insane. So then January 6th, Trump calls on us to all come and rally. So we do. We get there early. We make our way to the Ellipse at like 4 something in the morning. We stood there. I couldn't tell you. I think the speech started at like noon, maybe 11. And we stood there, no bathrooms, no cops, no fights, no nothing. And there was well over 1.5 million people there. And everything was peaceful. As we know, they altered Trump's speech. He said we are going to walk down to the Capitol peacefully and patriotically, which we did. I did not go running down the street. Most people don't realize that it's actually a 45-minute walk from the Ellipse. So I get to the Capitol. You start seeing all these people coming in. Most of all the gates and the fencing that had signs were all taken down. There's footage that will show you that police were taking them down. There might be a section where you saw protesters break through. But the reality is, before I had even gotten to the Capitol had been breached. And they make it seem like I breached the Capitol.
That's crazy. But let's talk about that for a second. There's 2 things I wanted to bring up there. Number one is, like, the Capitol, we pay as taxpayers. That's our building. Like, we have the right to go in there, right?
Yeah. It is We the People's House, and nobody was intending on storming and it wasn't an insurrection. The FBI has already deemed that it wasn't an insurrection, and out of 1,593 people arrested, not one person was charged with insurrection.
So, and then the next thing I wanted to go back to is something that you said about the Antifa guys walking you back to safety. Because what I've seen about the Proud Boys, the Proud Boys. But what I've seen as far as the Proud Boys and the J6ers go is that they're more about the people, about helping the people, because I want to move now to we're taping this on Monday, so let's just call it over the weekend when you went to the No Kings rally. I saw a video that you showed me, and that's been making its way around the internet of a liberal man. I don't know if he passed out or he was falling ill, and you guys, the J6ers and whoever else was with you, are helping this liberal man get to his feet and get stable so that he can also protest and do what he wants to do, which is his right. And rather than, shutting him or keep him on the floor or holding him down, these people who are seen as the evil ones, as the J6ers, are the ones that are propping this man up, and the liberals are nowhere to be found. And yet here you are, Kirstyn Niemela, and another gentleman picking up somebody that's against your political views because you're just doing the right thing for the people. And that's like, when you dissect it and you look at it, that's what this whole thing is about. You see, there's video of different people on January 6th, storming the Capitol and everything like that. But you also see people that they don't talk about on CNN, Proud Boys and other J6ers, picking up. I saw one video of some guys that were Team J6, I would call it, like helping a military dude up off the ground who had been trampled. That is not the narrative that the left has been pushing since, and what are we, 6 years into this now? 5 years, almost 6 years ago. That's not the narrative that the media was portraying about these folks that are really just getting down to humanitarian value, not even American values, but humanitarian values.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest frustrations with January 6th, was that if you look at any article, which is pages and pages and pages, if you Google my name, is just how much of like a monster I am. That like, I stormed the Capitol, I'm an insurrectionist, I'm a domestic terrorist. But what they failed to tell the American people and paint the true picture is like, I rescue dogs all the time. That's what I'm very well known for. I've taken in homeless people into my house and built them a room. I have put people through rehab. I've gone to North Carolina and was there bringing all supplies and getting to people on four-wheelers that couldn't be gotten to. And that's just who I am. I mean, I stop and help people on the side of the road. But if you read articles about me, you would think I was the worst human in the planet.
So let's talk about, that's a great segue into like our experience. So you contacted me like a year ago, and we're going to talk about Sarah in just in a little bit. You contacted me about a year ago in regards to your loved one and the struggles that she was having in federal prison, and another consultancy that you used that didn't muster up to what you were expecting. That's the only way I'm going to go with that. But in the everyday abundance of calls and things, and how busy that I am, for lack of a better word, I blew you off for a year. But, February 1st, everybody knows I got my ass kicked. I lost my vision in my left eye permanently. All this kind of stuff happened. And we met briefly a week or two before that in D.C. for breakfast, which caused an uproar, but we can talk about that another time. But, like, you rushed down here for nothing more than to say, let me help you in any way that I can. Even though you blew me off and, I'm not having a good experience with prison consultants, and everybody in the world, not everybody, but there's this narrative out there that's a false narrative a lot of people have seen that was created by a former employee of mine. The noise was overwhelming at that time in the beginning of February. You drove down here with barely little money to your name, and we're like, I'm going to stay here until you don't need me anymore. And that's the person that you are. So, I mean, thank you for that. But, like, that's not the monster J6er that the media portrayed you and all these countless other J6ers to be. I had a roommate that was a J6er at the DCU in Atlanta for a little bit. So let's segue to prison. What was that like for, like, so first off, before we get into prison, and I mean, I know you went down this road with my good friend Jason, because Jason, as you know, is one of those stand-up guys that went to trial. You took a fucking misdemeanor all the way to the box.
I did. So they did a reverse proffer with me, and the prosecutors flew to New Hampshire and sat with me at a round table and showed me all the evidence they had against me. And they offered me a plea deal. They would drop 3 of my charges if I pled to the lowest count, which is demonstrating, parading, and picketing.
And you would have done no time, 0.
Probably not.
Probation, most likely, if that.
Yeah. So.
But you still took it to the box. You were like, fuck that.
Yeah. I went outside with my lawyer, and he said, Kirstyn, that's the best deal you're going to get. You need to take it. And I said, no, I'm not taking it. And he proceeded to tell me, you're fucking insane, and you're going to go to prison. And I looked at him in the face, and I said, I suggest you start preparing for trial before I fire you too, because I had fired my other previous attorney. I said, I'm not taking the deal. I said, if I go to prison, then I'm going to prison on principle. And out of my 11-month sentence, I did 8 months. And, you know, most people that come out of prison, like I talked to a lot of the prisoners, they have no interest in doing prison reform or advocacy work. They have either done several bids, or they've done a long enough one and been traumatized enough that they have no interest in reliving it or giving a shit. They just want to move on with their life. I am one of the only J6ers that is still actively fighting for prison reform. And to touch on a little bit of what you said, yes, there are a lot of rumors. There are a lot of discrepancies in what happened. And, you know, for my reputation, first of all, I've done all of this since I got out of prison with no money, no donations, except what people have given me personally to help me. And I have fought tooth and nail. I spent a month in DC. I am a very moral person. So if I came here and you were robbing people, I would not be here. So I just want to make that clear to everybody. Have a clear understanding that I am for the people, and it's not to get rich. It's not for clicks. It's to really make change in this country, because I feel like God put me in prison for a reason. And I've come out one of the loudest fighters of all. And I just want to be able to help people. I want to get justice, and hopefully we can make a difference.
I mean, it is truly, for some of us, it's a labor of love. Like you came down here. You know, I don't want to share too much of your personal business, but me and Nelson met you in DC sometime around the 20th of January. We took you out to breakfast at one of my favorite places, Busboys and Poets. You had just your truck had just gotten fucked up. Some asshole had like vandalized your truck. You have a truck and a trailer to your a truck and 2 trailers to your name, and you were out there. Big smile on your face, patriotic suit and get up. But people don't know. And that's one of the things, I think the reason that me and you and Nico have become so close so fast is like, people don't know what you've personally been through, and that, you put it all on the line, when you have like nothing and you just keep giving. And for me, here, you've seen it firsthand. We turn around, we give all the money away. And one of the reasons we got into such a dire straits position is because I gave too much money away in the first year. But, here at 700 in the Yard, we have several different nonprofits and a food bank, and people are constantly here. And it's just like, now you've been here for like the last 6 weeks. I've been in the hospital 3 different times. And yet we get up every morning and we keep going and we keep pushing. And it's just like, when you're pushing, people might say you did such a baby bid. And that gets on my nerves, to tell you the truth, because I did 7 years, which is substantially more than 8 months. But then, like, one of my partners here, Eddie's done 17 years, so I can't even compare to that. But, at the end of the day, there's no point in sentence shaming anyone, because one day is too much, And if you can take an 8-month sentence and turn it into advocating for somebody that's been in prison for a number of years, like let's take Sarah, for instance. Sarah is your significant other. How long has she been locked up for?
14 years.
She's been locked up for 14 years, which is, when you put your 8 months next to that 14 years, that ain't shit. But here you are, like you would use the last penny in your bank account to make sure she has True Links, or to make sure she's got the paperwork that she needs to get her case moving through the system, or a friend of hers. And, that's somebody that did 8 months. Like, why not just, like, what did you see in prison that was like, okay, I got to keep going. People got to hear this.
Well, I saw a lot. I mean, the J6ers were a target in prison. Like I said, I don't know how, but they were all watching my podcast, and I live streamed on my way to self-surrender. So when I got there, the first question was, are you okay to go to in general population? And I was like, well, why wouldn't I be? I'm like, I have misdemeanors. I went to the Capitol. Like, why wouldn't I be okay in GP? And they were like, well, everyone knows who you are. I was like, nobody knows who I am. I was on CNN for like 2.5 seconds walking through the red ropes, 2 years ago by the time I'd gone to prison. I go, so there's no way that these inmates know who I am by face, unless you guys as the guards were showing them and telling them. So I get there, I had my FJB shirt on and they left me in holding for quite some time. And then I went to GP, and, everybody was like, I definitely going into a women's prison being gay, clearly gay, not gay for this day. It was like, they just flock. Like, whistling, can we clean your shoes? Can we cook for you? Can we this? It was definitely something that shocked the shit out of me, like just how the women act. But, we were, our mail was withheld. I wasn't given my legal mail, so I couldn't properly file my appeal. I had certain guards like, joking like, oh, did you steal Nancy Pelosi's laptop? Or, giving me shit when I got pictures of me and Trump in the mail. And, every phone call, like, in prison, like they'll pick and choose what they listen to, or if they have a guard, that's their job to sit there and listen to phone calls throughout the day. But the J6ers, we were like essentially red flagged. We were high profile inmates. So every phone call was being listened to as we were on the phone. And, I got called to the lieutenant's office a couple of times about things that I was telling my mom about what was happening in the prison. And I just saw the deep cover up from the guards to the captain, the lieutenants, the warden. And I was mortified that, people have been living through this for decades. And, here I am just in here for petty charges that nobody believed me, because chomos lie about their charges until they look up their paperwork. So they were like, you're lying. There's no way you're here for a misdemeanor. I'm like, call home and look me up. And some of them would be like, oh my God, my parents watch your podcast. They love you. They're Trump supporters. And then the other ones were just like, what the hell? So of course they're thinking, okay, there's something really wrong with the system that you send somebody with a misdemeanor to a medium security federal prison.
So what about veteran COs? You didn't have any veteran COs that were like
yes.
in your corner? So
I had about 4 COs. Now, mind you, we're on the mountain at Hazleton. So right. They go through all the prisons. So, I mean, I must have met so many guards in 8 months. But there were about 4 of them that wanted to help me. They tried to help me. And unfortunately, they were getting kickback from the higher up that just wasn't going to let it slide. They were shocked when I went to the SHU. Solitary confinement for people that don't know what the SHU is.
What did you go to the SHU for?
For asking a question.
What was the question?
So Sarah had got sent to the SHU out of the blue because an inmate who was in there for kidnapping her girlfriend at gunpoint and sexually assaulting her and on the run for 16 years is a stalker and was obsessed. So she ended up filing a false report that she was having a sexual relationship with a guard. Now, everybody who knew her knew that that was not true. But, you know, SIS had to pretend they were investigating, even though they knew the whole situation. So they took her to the shoe randomly, and I had gone and asked why she was in the shoe. And originally they had sent me back to my unit and told me basically it's none of your business. It's an investigation. And then I get called back halfway to back to my unit, and I get told to go to the lieutenant's office. So I go to the lieutenant's office, and he comes over and he's like, you know, what's wrong? And I asked him the same question. And he was like, okay, that's it. Go back to your unit. So again, I'm halfway back to my unit and I get called back. And I'm like, what is going on? So they make me sit outside for like 45 minutes. And then he's like, all right, take off all your belongings in this cell. And I was like, for what? And they were like, you're going to the shoe. And I said, man, I am going to own you when I get out of here. I said, this is insane. You have no valid reason to put me in the shoe. So needless to say, 18 days I spent in the shoe. On like the 7th day, they came to me and said that they were going to release me, that they had no reason to have me there, that I just got caught in the middle of something. And nope. Next thing you know, it was 18 days.
Holy
before
crap.
They let me out.
So then you finally did get back out of the shoe.
Yeah, after the horrendous treatment in the shoe. What
was that like? What's solitary confinement like in the shoe for a woman?
Well, I would have much rather have had my own cell, but unfortunately you're 2 to a cell. And they rarely move you at all. Even you basically have to fight your cellmate to be moved. So for instance, you're supposed to be allowed to go outside for an hour. It was like 21 degrees out, and I'm in a t-shirt and these thin pants, and I asked for a jacket. And the guard said, no, the higher ups took the jackets. I said, there's no way they took the jackets away. It's 21 degrees out. So I was like, no, I'll skip today. I waited for the captain and all them to come around. And I told him, I said, hey, you know, why'd you guys take the jackets away? We're trying to go outside. And he was like, we didn't take the jackets away. So then he proceeds to call out the guard in front of all of us in the shoe, which I knew was going to be a problem the second the captain left. So the captain leaves, and the guy walks up and down the hallway, and he says, so which one of you decided to go above my head? So I got off my bunk. I went to my door. I said, I did. And he was like, apparently you don't know how things work around here. Let's see if you get to go outside again. So out of 18 days, I went outside 3 times.
Oh, wow.
He found every reason, like my cellmate having a banana in her bed. You're not allowed to have food unless it's mealtime. I had a coffee packet on my desk. Wasn't allowed to have that. Just any reason just to mess with me. He was not going to allow us to go outside. They were late on, razor day to shave, clothes. They slammed this girl's hands in the door deliberately. They were standing outside her door, shaking pepper spray, laughing at her, telling her, oh, you want to kill yourself? Go grab the sheet. Come on, kill yourself. So I tried reporting all these things, and they all laughed at me and said, nah, if it was anybody else but her. And I said, it doesn't matter if you like her or not. She's still an inmate. And then finding out that a lot of the women in the shoe had been there, some of them, for a year and a half.
Holy shit.
That is so illegal. It's not even funny. And they get away with it saying that they're waiting for a transfer, or they caught another charge and they're waiting for the courts. That's not how that works. You cannot keep somebody in the shoe for a year and a half. I mean, you look at studies, anything over like 5 days, I think, is complete mental torture.
Yeah, and like Dick Durbin and all them have been researching that for years. So when you talk about advocacy, like what does advocacy mean to you? What is your advocacy agenda? Who are you fighting for? What would you like to see changed?
Well, I went to Congress, and unfortunately, being a conservative, I thought that I would have obviously better luck with the Republicans. Unfortunately, that did not really work out that way. A lot of them talk a good game on camera, and then you catch them in the hallway, and I brought up the bill that both parties had passed for prison reform to have individual oversight, not the BOP, investigating themselves. And so that was passed in, I believe, 2023.
The oversight bill.
And it has never been funded. So, I went to some of these people and I said, hey, I'm a J6er. This is what I went through. Now I'm fighting for prison reform. What can we do about this bill? How can you help me? And they basically just had a blank stare and they were like, oh, I'll have to check with my staff about jurisdiction. I said, jurisdiction?
Bullshit.
I said, you're Congress. I don't understand. So my issue was, at this point, like, I'm not a far right extremist that just because I'm a J6er, I sat at the table in prison with Democrats.
Right.
I educated them. A bunch of Democrats were crying and hugged me when I left and begged me to not forget about them. To me, it's not about political party. It's not about your race, gender, none of that. It's about being treated fairly. It's about the laws. And when laws change, people need to get justice. We've had several Supreme Court decisions that would overturn a lot of people's convictions. And the district court is just still saying no. So advocacy work for me is, it cannot just be hate the inmates, you're pieces of garbage. We don't care if you eat. We don't care if you get your cancer medication. For me, medical was horrible. Not as bad as others. I've never claimed to have it the worst. But basic things like contacts, they knew I had contacts. I bought brand new glasses. I had them special made in 24 hours so I could take them to prison. They told me I could have them. And then when I got inside, they took my Bible and they took my glasses and they mailed them home and wouldn't let me have them. So I sat with the same contacts in my face that are 30-day contacts for 6 months. Ouch. And I kept filing and filing and filing. And then, of course, they kept listening to my phone calls and they knew what the people on the outside were doing. And it was going to cause a big, huge thing. So they decided, right before you're about to get out the door, we'll give you a pair of contacts. But it's like I watched people not get cancer medication. You watch them give out Suboxone shots like it's candy. I watched all these women being drugged up with testosterone, growing facial hair, having psychotic breaks, beating the shit out of people left and right. And it was like I was seeing all of this, and it depends on really who you are, if you're favored or if the prison doesn't want to get a discrimination lawsuit. So they tend to favor the men that wear eyeliner and identify as women while they sexually assault women. The transgender, because that's been a huge thing that's going on in the courts right now. So they would beat the shit out of people, and the person who got beat up would go to the shoe and not the person who beat him up.
Yeah, that's crazy. Is there an organization, any do you align yourself with any of the advocacy groups out there right now for prison reform?
So I work very closely with Heather from First Network. I've done my research, and I would not go to any other group. I've joined other groups. I've looked at what they do.
You wouldn't go to the I Hate Kyle Sandler group?
No.
Okay.
No, she blocked me. She had a lot to say to me for no reason, except I guess her ratchet way of doing things and my honest way of doing things are different.
I mean, First Network, Heather Pirtle is an executive, an IT executive by trade, and she, like many people, started her prison reform movement as a loved one of somebody in prison, and now her man is home, and she's going harder. She turned it up a bunch of notches, and a lot of people thought of her presentation as a little bit more happy-go-lucky and friendly, and it is, but for some people that's what's needed, and I seen like she's just started another thing in the First Network where she's trying to get the groups to work together, and I believe that's one of the big things here. There's 155,000 inmates in federal prison. There doesn't need to be 16 different people working against each other. One of the things that I've kind of backed off of lately because of what happened in February, I used to constantly recommend other consultants when I'm not your specific cup of tea. I won't even get into their names right now because we don't see eye to eye on some of them, but I would throw business to other people knowing that we can't possibly take all the business because I know some of these other guys and I know some of them do good work. And we throw referrals back and forth to each other, or I know, for instance, there's this one consultant that's really good at 2255s, and if I had a 2255, I'd throw it their way, or this advocacy group actually does work, so I throw it to them their way, because there's 155,000 people. That's it. And so there doesn't need to be all this infighting and bickering when everybody has the same common goal. And I think that one of the things that First Network is very good at, I do support Heather Pirtle and First Network. I do. Some people don't closely align themselves with FAM, but I do a lot of outreach for FAM, the Fellowship Project, and of course ReEntry 1 down here in South Florida. But all of these different organizations are still trying to help all the same people, and it's better when they come together rather than fight each other.
Well, it's like, some of them do it for the fame, some of them do it for the donations, and then there's no receipts on where the money actually went or who they helped. Heather, for me, stands out. Even if you go to the BOP things that they have posted and you see comment after comment after comment back to back, First Network as a stakeholder. Heather could have walked away from it. Heather has no criminal history. She did it, and she's done it very differently. She built it and had actual data that we took to Congress. And other organizations posed as her in some instances, and some of them called the senators and tried to get her blocked from going to sit with them, because for some reason, I can't understand why in this movement, if you are truly in it to help people, why are you suing people? Why are you attacking people? Why are you sending people into other people's groups to spy on them, to, degrade them and attack them and make them out to be something that they're not, because they're getting more headway than you, And
it happens with us a lot at Federal Prison Tips, because I've become the giant in the industry on the consulting side, and it's because I've been a content creator since the 90s, and I'm very, very, very good at it, and I'm relentless about it, and people just constantly try and bring me down, when at the end of the day, if somebody needs our help, we're there to help them. But having partners like First Network and FAM and the Fellowship Project is a way to keep moving people through the system and highlighting the things that need to be helped. And if somebody wants to continue the fight after their loved ones come home, way more power to them. Just like you and me, we're home. We could go do anything, go build houses and make a lot more money than what you're doing now.
My thing with Heather is, if you look at all the stuff she's done, she has the data of the reports, which other organizations have tried to mimic. But she was the one to really start doing that in the depths that she did. And not only that, she does these fun things for, inmates on holidays and for their families. And, most of all, everyone's families that are a part of First Network will tell you, Heather single-handedly basically running it by herself, which is amazing, because I've been to her house. I've watched her do it. And she's just one person and keeping up with her regular job. And, she is always there for the family members. She helps guide them through this whole process. And, I would just like to see these people not be so criminal-minded, ignorant, or vindictive, and realize that we are all fighting for the same thing. And if we could all come together, we all offer different things. Like Heather will tell you, she's not good with social media or content. I've offered to help with that aspect. That's something you're known for. To say that you can please every customer is impossible. Some inmates are a little bit over the top, where they think, them paying for services is a guarantee.
You're like right now in the thick of this.
Yeah.
It's funny because, it's a real hard line working at or having Federal Prison Tips, as you've seen firsthand now for the last 6 weeks. And it's a labor of love, and it's very hard to keep it straight in your head. And what I mean by that is, it's I was there. I was there for 7 years through 3 security levels, camp, low, and medium. And I know that these people want it now. Since day one, we've never guaranteed anything except the 52%, which we don't guarantee anymore. But we say most of our clients get home in 52%, and they do. But we don't guarantee outcomes in court. You can't. A judge could wake up on the wrong side of the bed or not get laid the night before, and you could just be doomed in court. But we're not miracle workers. And the funny thing, or not the funny thing, is one of the sad things is, one of my greatest friends in the world is Nelson from Honor Among Thieves, and he told me, like, he's come here, he helped train you, and he helps us with different projects here. We're still affiliated, and he told me as one of my best friends, I hated my job at Federal Prison Tips because the entitlement and just I'm one person, and we have a team here, and everybody wants everything, and they want it now, and we're doing the best we can, and we're doing better than anybody else ever has. And some people are just really thankful, and people don't get it. Like, there's not, before this incident happened on February 1st, we had 985 clients, and we shipped 1,131 projects. And yeah, there was probably 7 or so people that we identified that slipped through the cracks out of nearly 1,000, which is less than 1%, which is, in any other industry is the cost of doing business. And I feel some type of way for those people, and we've helped them in every way we can. But then, there's other people that realize that there's 3,600 videos. I've made 3,600 videos. We've helped 512 people get home, but we've helped tens of thousands of people navigate prison who didn't pay us. I got this one, there was a lady named Mama, her screen name was Mama Dukes. And she went to, she went to Brian. I think she's still there now on a 60. And right after she surrendered, she wrote me a letter from Brian. And she told me, Kyle, I was in your lives every single day. I had 3 spiral notebooks filled with notes that I made on your lives. Unfortunately, with my 5 kids and getting ready to go to prison, I couldn't afford a consulting package or anything, but I wanted you to know that everything you said has helped me every step of the way through prison. And that's like why I do this every single day. Recently, Heather did the same thing that we did. The Bureau just released the fact that they've updated 37 programming statements since the first of the year, which is a feat in itself, because you had programming statements that hadn't been updated since 1980 something, which is fucking ridiculous. So yes, props to Billy Marshall, Rick Stover, and Josh Smith for taking the time to go through it. But they put out this fanfare last week that's like, hey, congratulations, the Bureau of Prisons has fixed 37 programming statements and didn't say which ones. So you got all these people out here in social media land like, Kyle, what'd they do? So me and you and Heather, we went through line by fucking line of every single damn one to say, this is what they did here, this is what they did here, this is what they did here, this is what they did here. And you know what? That content's free. It doesn't cost anybody anything to watch it on our TikTok, our Instagram, our Facebook, wherever it is posted. And we're making infographics and having lives and all this stuff because, when people ask me why I did Federal Prison Tips, I did it for 2 reasons. Number one, I couldn't get a fucking job. I applied to 367 jobs. I couldn't get one, so I started this TikTok. It went micro viral. The other one is, who is Federal Prison Tips for? My mom. And the reason it's for my mom is because when I went to prison, I had run for 18 months, so I never saw the light of day after I got apprehended. And my mom is on fucking Facebook like everybody else, and they're getting a different answer to every question on every group from 16 different people. And, I said, fuck it, and I was going through the same thing in county jail. I'd find every single person that had been to feds. What's this like? What's this like? Where am I going? And it's different answers. So let me come up with the right answer at least from my experience, in minimums, lows, and mediums. I was a crash test dummy, so I went to all kinds of different places. And that's what formed the foundation of the content that we do for free, in addition to the other stuff that we do. But that's, I digress, and that's all me. But I just think that what you've done through your own trials and tribulations and through your own experience and your own beliefs as an American, as a human, as a J6er is nothing short of phenomenal. And, the lengths that you push yourself to help the people is unheard of. So, hats off to you for that. What do you think is the biggest thing that needs to be changed in the federal prisons?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I know.
Where do I start? Well, I want to make this clear. I've gotten to arguments with people that say, well, you can't do prison reform, Kirstyn, unless you help everybody, because whatever changes you make within the BOP affects every prisoner. You can't segregate people. That was one of my hardest things, like fighting for actual changes in the BOP, better living situations. Some may hate me for it. Some may love me for it. But I am not personally, individually fighting for chomos, pedophiles. It is off the list. Now, don't get me wrong. An 18-year-old that is on the same list that his girlfriend is 17, that I do not believe is a chomo or a pedophile. And there has to be, that's another thing I would like to see change, is the categories of a registered sex offender. But the actual people that are raping children, I do believe that the BOP should utilize and put some money or shift things around, and that the chomos should be in their own prison.
Yeah.
I think that transgenders should be in their own prison. It's not fair to women, especially. I mean, really, men aren't afraid of a transgender woman going to a men's prison. Let's be real. But the opposite is a problem, because as you saw in California, Dublin, you had the chaplain, the warden, like 18 officers indicted. And the only reason they really found out was because somebody brought in a cell phone, probably a guard, and it was being recorded of these women screaming for help, being raped. And it was people's families. And then you had like the military, and the judge actually went to the prison and they shut it down. And you talk to people all these years later and they still don't even know about Dublin. They think that, oh, no, that's what you see in the movies. And like, I'm still, my one video that's going kind of viral about, me going to prison, to a women's prison with men. And people are like, no way, that's actually happening. Like they don't believe it.
It's a real thing.
Medical needs to change. I know that Carswell doesn't even have a medical license since the COVID era.
None of them do. All of the accreditation went away in 2022.
So it's like, we need major change in that aspect. Not these guards that like got bullied in school their whole life and then decided, let me go to the worst of the worst, where we can just treat people like despicable human beings and just not care about them. So, I mean, I would like to see a lot of policy changes. And I would like to also say, since I know Billy Marshall and all them probably watch this, is that I find it ironic that Trump has a former felon, former incarcerated individual working for the BOP. I'm not against that. Let me make that clear. I don't appreciate all the hate that he's getting, because it's taking away from the work that he could do. I'm a little disappointed in both of them on the aspect of, there are several J6ers who have gone to the DOJ, who have gone to Congress, who are on social media, who have reached out to them, that have been ignored, right? Because we don't really have skin in the game. We are not some high criminal. Most of us are not even felons, like myself. Why not care about the opinions or what we went through? Because today, still today, every officer who harassed, demonized women, sexually assaulted women, did what they did, are still currently working at Hazleton. So I would just appreciate if they would reach out to some of the J6ers who have been trying to really make a difference and could offer something, kind of like Alice Johnson's position. She had a life sentence, and now look at what all the things that she gets to, do and be a part of. And there's a lot of us that want to be a part of that and want to help.
So like I say a lot of times on my Both Sides of the Fence podcast, you know, in my time in federal prison, I've been through 3 or 4 different directors. Let me think. Kathleen Hawk Sawyer, Michael Carvajal, Colette Peters, and Billy Marshall. Out of those 4, obviously this Marshall regime right now has been the most effective for affecting change in the prison system, and it is a daunting task. You know, things have been so status quo and so status quo for so many years that they have a mountain of things to go through. The other thing is, you know, I personally have a relationship with some of the top level people in the BOP and access to them directly, not through their remailer addresses. And I know from talking to them and either online or on the phone or whatever, they're tremendous. They get so many different people that it's like me, you know, everybody wants to talk to me. And they can't because I'm just one person. That's why we have different packages here. But, you know, I think maybe they do. Maybe Christine Brashears or somebody needs to have, or Ed needs to have a J6 liaison that can highlight some of these things. That would be a really good move. I do think it's a great move to have Josh Smith in this position. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know who didn't do the research is that Josh Smith has been out of prison for 20 years. And when he got out of prison, he started his company, Master Something in Tennessee, which was a renovation and general contracting company in Tennessee that employed 240 plus felons. And then he started the Fourth Purpose Foundation, which is a prison consultancy that consults prisons, where we're a prison consultancy that consults people that go to prison. And through the Fourth Purpose Foundation, he was instrumental in working with the DOC in Florida, in Iowa, and in several other states to reform prisons. And he's been to Norway and seen some of these prisons where they do just some really radical things that would probably help affect some change. And some of those changes they're trying to implement here in the Bureau. Like, you know, they just bid out the tablets, and the tablets will be changing over, hopefully, if they hit the right timeline, over the summer. And the tablets will start offering video visits and downloadable movies and cop-outs on the tablet, just, you know, making it a little bit more 2026. Also, the ability to do cop-outs on the tablets and teach curriculum on the tablets. All these things are coming from Josh's experience in the industry prior to being in this position. So I think that we have the best possible administration now, but things don't happen overnight. And one of the things that you're seeing is a culture that's been created through the previous 4, 5, 6 different directors, a culture of inmates are bad, guards are good, inmates will never be anything but convicts, fuck the inmates, you know, keep them, you know, that's my job, I need to punish. That's not what the BOP is there for. It's for rehabilitation and keeping the community safe. And so you have all these old school people, especially the ones up on the hill, on the mountain at Hazleton and Thompson and USP Lee, you know, where they've been in these mountains and these areas all by themselves with no oversight. And that's just the way that it's been. So, you know, yeah. And then the other thing is nobody wants to work for the BOP. And that's not new. That's, you know, for years and years and years. So when nobody wants to work for an organization, it's been number 435 of 435 institutions in the federal government for the past 5 years. When nobody wants to work there, it actually creates a job security better than anything. And I've said it in videos before. For some people, you know, you'd have to go to D.C. to First Avenue and shit on Billy Marshall's desk to get fired. And so that's the where you're at. And you see it every day. Like, I'm not going to do whatever fucking felon tells me to do. Well, if you're in that logic where you think that, or you know that Trump's got a bunch of felonies, that's your boss. When you go to a federal prison, you know, in most admin areas of the federal prison, you're going to see a line of photos, starting with President Trump. That's the boss. Then you got J.D. Vance. That's the second boss. Then you've got, you know, Pam Bondi. That's the next boss. Those are the bosses. That's who they work for. And, you know, if so be it. If they put Josh Smith in place, that's the boss. And in some regards, having a former inmate in that position is one of the best things that you could do, because they've been there and they know what it's like. Other DOCs do that too. They have, they just in New York, the new commissioner of the DOC was a former Rikers Island inmate. And I guess that's an echo from Mondami from President Trump choosing Josh Smith. I think that there is change coming. We've seen it with these things, but it's going to take people like you and me and Heather Purtle and the people that want to mobilize in this movement to help create an atmosphere where people can come forward and people can realize that this is America. This is the United States of America. We're supposed to have the best prisons. They're supposed to be about rehabilitation. They're supposed to be about the First Step Act and reducing recidivism, and that the old school is not the way to go.
Well, and to touch on that, I was happy to hear about Josh Smith. And, I've done my research on him. But what I find to be the sad part of it all is that you look at a man who was successful in all the things that he did, right? And he was a previous inmate. But the public's perspective is the problem, right? Even the guards, they have played nicey nice to his face, and then they retaliate against prisoners, and they talk shit, and they do it on the internet, and they are like, fuck you, I'm not working for a felon. But this is where, it's not just advocacy work that I'm doing, it's making the public aware, because every day if you read the comments on my post, they're like, well, what do we do? I don't have that experience, but this isn't acceptable. And it is your tax dollars paying for these inmates. So every tax-paying American should be concerned. And the problem that I find is the ignorance in, oh, you're a felon. We also need to be working outside of the prisons for more reentry, more companies that come out and say, you know what, we'll hire felons. Because that is a problem. And when you go so long in these prisons and you get out into the real world where you might have gone in before social media was what it is today. You don't know what a podcast is, what a meme is. Everything's digital in the world. I mean, a lot has changed.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't have the necessary tools for these people to get out and be successful, because the probation is just like the first mistake you make, going back to prison.
Yep.
And it's just a revolving door. But you see people like Josh Smith, and I wish other prisoners would get recognized in a sense, because there should be more with compassionate release. I do think that the wardens should be doing more to try and get people who have earned it, right? If we're based on second chances, redemption, rehabilitation, I mean, I will tell you there's different aspects. Some prisons, there is actual rehabilitation, okay, in certain programs. I will tell you some of the classes I did, the guy half the time never even showed up. He just wrote us a certificate. We were learning about how to use a tampon, how to wipe. I mean, the most ridiculous shit that was just comical to me. So it's like, these programs need to be better. They need to definitely bring back more apprenticeships and not just cutting hair. I know the dog program is really good for a lot of inmates. I know I would have a much better time in prison if I was surrounded by a dog. But I just think that we need
surrounded by a dog.
We need to also continue to educate the average American person who has never gone to prison or never had a family member, and get them to stand up. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, there has to be changes in this country with how people are treated. And I would say my biggest disappointment with the Trump administration is that we have not impeached or removed not a single judge. And this is where the problem starts, is with the prosecutors and the judges, right?
Yes,
we
ma'am.
know that they have coercing people to take a plea deal. They threaten you with the death penalty. They threaten to hit you with 9 million more charges just to get you to take that plea. If you look at the numbers, it's over 90% of federal cases end in a plea.
96.
And I mean, for January 6th, it was 99.8%. We had one that got dismissed, and it was a Trump appointee, and he either got his family threatened or whatever happened, and all of a sudden he started nailing people to the wall. But there was only one individual, you don't really hear about it, that was dismissed. He could not convict him off of the videos that were shown, because someday soon, you're going to see that it was entrapment. And this is why the J6ers are fighting for compensation and for justice, because thank you, President Trump, for the pardon. But it did not affect me the way it affected the people who were actually inside. Their pardons got them out of prison. I did my time. I did 1 year and 8 months on pretrial, being treated like a criminal, red flagged at TSA, you name it, then doing my prison time, and then I did 10 months of probation. So my pardon saved me from 2 months of probation. That's it. But that pardon didn't restore my life. It didn't restore my reputation. There's no executive order to swipe, Google, or to designate us as a special party of citizens. I don't know. There's got to be something, because our lives are just not the same. And I know that I've had arguments with people that say, oh, well, black people have been going through this for decades. J6ers aren't special. You have to not be ignorant to the fact that you may not agree with my politics. But if you look at the J6 cases, you have never seen anything like that in history. Okay? They blackballed us from Airbnb, PayPal, Bank of America, Chase. People got their mortgages dropped. People lost their VA benefits. People are still homeless. People lost custody of their kids. People had raids with guns pointed at their children laying in their crib for misdemeanors. Okay? They took the air marshals off of actual terrorists in this country to follow J6ers. It is the most expensive investigation and resources that we have ever spent in America.
That definitely needs to be fixed. Well, thank you very much for spending some time with us. I'm sure you'll be back because you practically live here. But where can people follow you online?
You can follow me on TikTok, which is Patriot for Truth 6. And that is basically the same for my ex. And I just joined Instagram, so don't come for me. Yes, I only have like 200 followers. So I'm trying to climb that, but social media is not really my thing. I think I need a secretary.
And you can also get her at Kirstyn at federalprisontips.com. She's our assistant manager and our advocacy director. And if you have advocacy issues, she'll help you out, and we'll get it down the line to Heather Pirtle at First Network and our other advocacy partners. And thank you very much for joining us for this very first episode of the Yard podcast from the Yard Content Studio, where we're reducing recidivism through content creation. Find out more at theyardcreates.org, and we'll see you next time for the Yard podcast here from the Yard.
God bless America.
Yes.